Welcome back to module number 2, video number 2. So in this video, we're going to talk more about protein. So what are some things you may have heard about protein? Maybe protein only comes from meat, or maybe that you can only consume X amount of protein per meal. So let's start off by talking about what is protein. Protein is a compound made up of amino acids, and amino acids are essentially the building blocks of protein. And there's two types of amino acids, essential and non-essential amino acids. An interesting fact is that protein has the highest thermic effect of food, meaning that after you consume protein, or let's say a high protein meal, the protein in that meal is going to burn more calories essentially. So amino acids, like I mentioned earlier, there's essential and non-essential amino acids. Essential amino acids are the amino acids that you need to consume from food. And the non-essential are the ones that your body makes. So at times, non-essential amino acids can potentially become essential amino acids if that's what the body needs. So what are the functions of protein? I know most commonly you might hear that protein helps to build muscle, which it does, but it also helps transport different substances in the body. It also helps to maintain fluid and electrolyte balance. Protein is huge in the cells, and protein also helps during blood clotting as well. Let's dive into supplements. First, I would like you to know that supplements are not needed, and they are also not regulated by the FDA. And you may have heard of BCAAs, or maybe someone recommended you to use BCAAs. The thing is, if you're consuming enough protein from enough sources, or a variety of sources of protein, then you don't need amino acids. So if you get marketed to buy amino acids, or someone tells you, hey, buy some amino acids, well, you know that technically you're wasting your money, because if you're eating enough protein and eating them from a variety of sources, then you don't need BCAAs, which are branched chain amino acids. Another thing is protein powders. So the most common is whey protein, which contains all amino acids and is easily digested. So consuming whey right after a workout is very good, as well as there is casein, which is a little bit longer digesting. So if you consume casein, you're going to feel a little bit fuller longer. So a lot of people might consume casein before they go to bed, so it keeps them a little bit full. And whey and casein are both milk-based sources of protein powders. And then for vegans, there is soy, which is a very good vegan alternative as well. So next, let's talk about protein quality. So what makes up the protein quality is the amino acid profile and how well the protein digests in the body. Ideally, a good protein source would contain all essential amino acids. If you consume animal sources of protein, they contain all essential amino acids. And then again, animal sources of protein are most easily digested in the body as well, and also easily absorbed. Not to say that other sources of protein are not so good, but animal sources do tend to be a higher quality protein compared to other sources of protein because of their amino acid profile and just how easily they're digested in the body. So let's talk about a little bit more about vegan options. You might be vegan, vegetarian, or maybe you just don't like eating meat that much. So when it comes to choosing non-meat sources of protein, then you have to make sure you're eating a variety of protein sources from plants. And so the term complementary protein is essentially eating different sources of protein so that they complement each other in terms of their amino acid profile. So let's say grains contain protein and they have these amino acids, and then you eat that grain with legumes, let's say beans, and they're going to have a different set of amino acids. So when you consume them together in the same meal, they complement each other because essentially the combination of those amino acids creates a complete amino acid profile, if that makes sense. And another thing you might have heard is gluten-free, like, oh, I'm gluten-free, or maybe you've heard or seen products in the store that are gluten-free. So let's start what gluten actually is. Gluten is a protein that forms in grains, and usually individuals with celiac disease or some sort of gluten sensitivity can experience very, very uncomfortable symptoms like chronic diarrhea, or maybe they just have to go to the bath, abdominal pain, and other stuff like that. They're just very, very uncomfortable. So a lot of people might do gluten-free because they think that's going to help with curing or preventing a disease, but no recent or current scientific evidence suggests that it helps with obesity, cancer, headaches, or any other diseases that you may have heard about. And foods that are gluten-free also tend to be higher in fats, added sugars, and calories. So if you want to go gluten-free, I would suggest, if you don't have celiac disease or any sort of gluten sensitivity, to not to go gluten-free. But if you just like the foods that are gluten-free, or you just want to try it, then go for it. Please do see a registered dietitian or a doctor before you make any sort of change in your diet, though. So you may have heard that the body only absorbs X amount of grams of protein. For example, it can only absorb 20 to 25 grams of protein per meal. Well, actually, based on a literature review by Dr. Schoenfeld, this is proven to not be true. So basically, the upper limit of protein in a meal is basically limitless. So you can technically eat 80 grams of protein in a meal. The only thing is that I would be careful because everyone's tolerance is a little bit different. So do pay attention to that. If you eat a high protein meal and then you end up with some sort of sensitivity to it, then I would suggest eating a little bit lower of protein in your meals. But overall, calorie and protein intake matters the most in terms of like meeting your protein intake rather than the amount of protein per meal. And if you would like to read more about the study, I have a link down here below if you want to look into that. So what are some examples of protein? So the most obvious is animal sources of protein, eggs, and all that stuff. And then there's protein powders as well. Again, remember, these are supplementary, meaning you don't need them, but they can definitely be helpful in achieving your protein goal. There's also grains. Quinoa is such a great source of protein. I think if it's maybe either half a cup or 1 cup, contains around 5 grams of protein. And in terms of veggies, edamame is such an amazing source of protein as well. I believe half a cup might have around 8 grams of protein. And then soy products as well, like tofu, is a really great source of protein. Firm tofu is usually used in like stir fries and in meals like that. But you can also use like silken tofu, which is a little bit softer, and add it to your protein shakes. And because the texture is so soft, it kind of just blends in, and you can increase your protein intake that way as well. So here are the recommendations of protein. DRI is just the daily recommended amount according to the USDA, which is 10 to 30% of your total calories. It really depends on you and your goals. If you're trying to build muscle, research says that 0.8 to 1 gram per pound of body weight is ideal. So an easy way could be just to memorize 1 gram per pound of body weight. So if I weigh 120 pounds, I would consume at least 120 grams of protein. So that is it for this video. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out and let me know. I hope this information was helpful.